I don't see the 30. Oh, the 30 seconds is the loading bar at the bottom. Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Uh, I am Milja Franck, and I wish to welcome you on behalf of Global Compassion Coalition, uh, our guest today, as well as all the people following online, and also warm regards to everyone who will be watching the recording later. The more people we can share your ideas with, the better. So Dr. Bruno Cignacco or Cignacco is here with us today. He is a TEDx speaker, researcher, business consultant. For over 30 years, he has advised and trained hundreds of companies on international marketing and other business topics. He is a university professor at several institutions in the UK, a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and what brings us here today is the second edition of your book, The Art of Compassionate Business. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Milja, for your invite. Thank you very much.
I am thrilled at the opportunity to encounter your ideas and read the book. Just to briefly share my impressions in the context of what we're trying to achieve at the Global Compassion Coalition. The book is a wonderful resource from the point of view of our mission, which is to support transformation towards a just economy and systemic behavior change. Because your book is a true thesaurus when it comes to the ways to diagnose what are the barriers to systemic behavior change at personal level, at cultural level, as well as uh, how to get inspired and how to overcome them. It's very thorough. It has an incredible bibliography and true resources for people to orient themselves in this very important and very complex process of changing behavior systemically towards a just economy. So
Thank you.
today, today I would like to focus with you on creativity and trust. Those are very important building blocks in what we are hoping to achieve. Creativity is key to imagining new ways we can establish economic relationships with each other, new business models we could develop, and trust is necessary to keep us, to actually allow us to start truly working with each other for win-win-win situations. So, in all your years of experience, given all the companies that you worked with, what do you find is holding people back from being able to foster creativity in their business?
Thank you for this question. This is a very important question, and I want to say that there are many obstacles to creativity. A very important obstacle is the endowment effect. People are happy, are pleased with what they already have, even when this is negative. So this means that people are resistant to change. They don't want to explore by default new ideas, new ways of doing business. And also this is connected to another effect called Einstein effect. That is an effect that implies that when people find a solution for a specific problem, they don't bother looking for additional solutions or much more innovative solution to this problem. And there is an interesting example that I mentioned in my book of Blockbuster, a company that many of the attendees might have heard. In the past, this company was very popular, very big company, and they were offering some movies for hire. But this company was so stuck to the current business model at that moment that they didn't think about the new trends, new technological trends, and they didn't foresee the preeminence of the streaming industry, the movie streaming industry. And this company, at the end, downsized a lot and it's almost disappeared because was obviously outpaced by other companies that were much more technologically advanced, like Netflix. So this show you that you cannot get stuck to the current structures or current business model without thinking and without looking for new ways to add value to different stakeholders.
Yes, I have actually dug into the Blockbuster story, and turns out they did try to use their substantial resources towards the end to pivot to streaming, but they were not able to do it well enough to beat out the newcomer Netflix. And so I find it interesting that you connect the blockers to creativity to resistance to change, because um, it sounds like the very ability to adapt and to notice that you are no longer meeting your customer needs, or that the circumstances have changed, is very, very vital for business survival. And that the effects you mentioned seem to have a increased attachment to status quo, even when the processes in place are obsolete or no longer serving the company at all.
I agree, and I want to mention a very important thought leader that is Edward de Bono, that died recently. And Edward de Bono observed that in the 21st century, the most important resource will not be funds, will not be information, will not be any other resource, but creative skills. The creative skills are the most important skills that any person can develop and enhance.
Okay. I also really liked the rigid mental categorization part in the book. Can you tell us about how that can hold people back?
Yes, when we learn new knowledge, we keep this knowledge in our memory, long-term memory, in rigid categories. These categories are unlikely
Just
to be changed
one
so much.
moment, Bruno, please. Am I the only one who is getting some sound modulation when I'm listening to Bruno?
Hello?
Yes. So if the studio could indicate in the chat whether everyone can hear Bruno. Okay, people can hear him. Wonderful.
Okay,
Please
okay.
continue. I just wanted to
Yes.
make sure that
Okay.
you are coming through.
Thank you very much. So I was saying that there are, when people learn new knowledge or go through new experiences, these experiences are stored in our memory through rigid categorizations. So this means that you have rigid mental categories where you store the information in your long-term memory. These categories are unlikely to be broken up very easily. They are very rigid, very inflexible. And this is quite important. Why? Because, for example, let's talk about the industrial sector. For example, when we talk about the transport sector, for example, taxi transport sector, you see that companies that are taxi companies or cab driver companies, they own the vehicles. They own the vehicles, and these vehicles serve passengers to go from one place to another. However, some entrepreneurs, like the founders of Uber, broke up these categories, these rigid categories, and developed a new business model, a revolutionary business model that was completely different, but competed also with the taxi companies, and was a business model based on an app, a very easy to use app, that connected passengers that are willing to travel from one place to another, and also owners of vehicles, particular owners of vehicle that they have a spare car or a spare vehicle, and they can offer this vehicle to transport passengers. So this means that they thought beyond the sector, the transport sector, and obviously we know that Uber is a very popular company worldwide.
Yes, I think that that is an interesting example of transforming the way assets are traditionally approached, and the business models work traditionally in a proactive way. An example that I like, being based in Paris, is Hermes in France. They used to be a horseback saddle company, and when horses were replaced by cars, they said, what do we do? We process leather really well. So they started making bags and expanded their product offering. And over 100 years later, they're still going strong. So
I like David. There is another case that I mentioned in the book, that is during COVID-19, many distilleries their sales were going down. And what they didn't want to lose business. They started producing sanitizer. Why? Because all the machinery and the infrastructure that they had was already suitable for producing sanitizer. This means that flexibility is key in business, because we are always navigating fast changing environments.
Yes, that's wonderful. So, overcoming rigid mental categorization can help people recognize that they are facing changing circumstances or see an opportunity to change the circumstances themselves. So, what can you tell us about short term orientation, which I am sure everyone is more than familiar with?
Yeah. We're always thinking about the short term, what is urgent, what is we think that is important. For example, companies are thinking about serving customer, paying the bills, paying taxes. This is quite urgent, quite important. We cannot postpone this. However, when you initiate a creative process, this process can take a long time. And in some cases, this process is a process which includes trial and error experiences. This means that you might develop a prototype, this prototype fails, but you learn from this failure, this negative experience, and then you can improve the prototype. And I mentioned a very interesting example of an entrepreneur, Sir James Dyson, that is very well known now. This entrepreneur, when he started working on a vacuum cleaner model, most of the companies in the sector were producing vacuum cleaners with bags. This means they were non-reusable bags. And this entrepreneur said, why we should use bags? And this was a multi-million sector, the bags, non-reusable bags. And he started trying and experimenting with many prototypes, more than 4,000 prototypes, to end up with a bagless vacuum cleaner that revolutionized the sector. And then this was copied by other companies that at the beginning were despising his ideas. So this means that being innovative is shaping the future, going one step ahead. You don't want to accept the future, you shape the future. You have a foresightedness, means thinking ahead.
Yes. Also sounds to me like his objectives were a little different because non-reusable bags are a steady stream of revenue, although it sounds very painful for the back if you're using the vacuum cleaner. But yeah, he was trying to take the customer point of view and increase value to the customers instead. So
There is another example that I mentioned in the book that is about Google, the search engine. Search engine wasn't the first search engine that was developed in the marketplace. There were other search engines, for example, Yahoo and others. But what happened? Google wanted to develop something new, not to copy other search engines. They want to develop a search engine that is uncluttered. And this is the signature characteristic of this search engine. Google is characterized by clutter-free search engine as compared with other search engines that include a lot of links, information, and could be a bit confusing to use.
I see. So you're saying from the user friendliness point of view, that was one of the keys to Google success. And
To Google success, yes, yes, because most of the company by default will try to copy others. Why? Because it's easier. They will try to follow the market trends. But why not to develop new trends? So why not to develop new trends? Now the use of apps, for example, apps for getting a car, Uber car, or apps to get, for example, Airbnb accommodation. These are new ways of serving customer and new ways of serving customer that could be quicker, more effective. And also when innovators develop new business models or new product or new service, they have to take into account this important aspect. Are we adding additional value to customer? Are we adding additional value to the community? Are we adding additional value to employees? So the very important characteristic of creativity and creative products and creative services and innovation in general is that they should be focused on adding higher value, should be superior than the product and services that are currently offered in the marketplace.
well, I can put myself in their shoes from the point of view of, on the one hand, if I generate reliable revenue streams, even at the expense of user friendliness, I'm going to meet my narrow revenue profit goals. If I try to develop new solutions, I could undercut my revenues. And in addition, there is a lot of uncertainty in developing.
That
You
is
mentioned 4,000 prototypes before the bagless vacuum cleaner worked.
Yes, uncertainty is a very important issue for many companies. Why? Because most of the company want to control everything. How they control? Because they are fearful of uncertainty. They control through, for example, budgeting. They control through plans, strategy. They control through cost projections. So why? Because they try to set up some order, some certainty. Planning is a process of setting some level of certainty. When companies face uncertainty, they are obviously very cautious. Many companies are not willing to go through an uncertain process. And in creativity, in the creative process, you have two types of uncertainty. The first type of uncertainty is, will the final product work? Will this final product, this innovative product, will this be valuable or not? Will this product add value to customer, to employees, to community? But the second is, what type of techniques or method do we have to use? There are many options. So, and what type of resources we have to use, what type of material, what type of design. So many options, and you're never completely sure. Why? Because, as we mentioned, it's a process that in some cases you have something that you get this right, but something that are not so right, and you learn from this negative experiences. So this means that many companies do not release the sense of control. And this is very interesting. Why? Because these companies tend to be very regulated. They have a lot of policies, how to do things, how to communicate to customer, how to hold meetings. And however, there are some companies that are obviously more open to uncertainty. I give the example of Pixar. Pixar, the animation movie producer, that we have a new movie coming out now, and this company is a very important creative company. Why? Because most of the movies like Toy Story and other Monster Inc. that are very popular, have been very popular in the past, took years to develop, took hundreds of ideas from different teams, from the technical team, from the artistic team, and they also a lot of meeting also to discuss the idea, to give each other feedback, a lot of uncertainty about the final quality of the product. So until it was launched into the marketplace. So this means that, but this company is always raising the bar. This means that you see the history of all their movies, and the movies are getting even better and better, much more lifelike characters and much more interesting plots. Why? Because they learn and they always go to and want to meet higher standards.
So quite opposite of short-term orientation.
Opposite to short-term orientation. And obviously, but what happened? Let's think about this. If we do not innovate, the thing will stay in the same way. This will be we will be stuck to the status quo, and there won't be any progress in humanity and in history. So this means that companies are responsible to add more value to society, to the community, to customer, and to other stakeholders. So this means that, and also, if some company won't do this, there will be other companies that are very willing to do this. So companies like Uber or Airbnb were revolutionary. Why? Because they took the chance to try a new model. So this means that creativity implies also an experimental approach. We will try to see if this work or not. We are not completely sure, but we will test. We are willing to improve over time if this doesn't work and learn from our experiences.
So how can creativity, other than the examples you mentioned with Uber and Pixar, lead a company to solve real world problems and transform lives for the better?
There are many examples that I mentioned in the book. For example, there is a very interesting example of Hippo Roller. I think that you like this example.
I
And
like that one, yes.
Hippo Roller is a very interesting example. It's a social enterprise that is focused on providing a very interesting device. What is like a roller, is a container that contains 90 liters of liquid, water, for example, and has a handle that can be roll forward, roll back. And why this is so important? Because in many less developed countries, for example, South African countries, people take a lot of time to get water. This task generally is taken over by women. And for example, women and girls go and take part of their day, a very important part of the day, to go long distances to get some water for sanitation, irrigation, and other important basic needs. And also, because they take a lot of time, they cannot devote this time to work or to go to school. but also in some cases, because they use buckets, the traditional way to carry water is buckets, they have some health issues. In some cases, the carrying buckets for a long distance, it can bring about spinal issues. So this means that this company thought about this. How can we add a very important value to this community? And they offer a very durable, practical, easy to use, easy to maintain roller. And also, because it's a social enterprise, they try to partner up with some organization, for example, like Rotary Club. And there is an interesting example in the book that Rotary Club donated through Hippo Roller these containers to, for example, um, um, teenagers that were mothers in Lesotho. And this was very important for that community because they could have access to the water with less time, in a more practical way, taking care of their health. And this is a company that has an innovative method to bring about water, carry water, and also have a very important social impact.
That is an amazing example of using creativity to solve real world problems, and designing products for an environment that you mentioned is actually much more challenging than it sounds. From the big foundations that constantly receive pitches for products and services to improve quality of life worldwide, there is a whole graveyard of products who were rolled out but are too difficult to maintain or impractical or not intuitive. And so designing something that does not require external support or additional resources to continue working and is so transformative to people being able to meet their needs, such basic needs, is really an achievement.
There is an interesting example also that I mentioned in the book about a company that has a very interesting social impact, that is Divine Chocolate. This company is a company that obviously offers organic fair trade chocolate, and this company is co-owned by a cooperative called Kuapa Kuku Farmers Union that is composed of more than 100,000 farmers in Ghana. And this company obviously produce chocolate, high quality chocolate, and also buy the cocoa from these farmers. This company, this farmer get a fair price for this cocoa, and with this fair price can maintain their families. Fair price implies that the company is paying a fair price for their products, the inputs, and they are paying, if supposing that the price of cocoa, internationally speaking, they go down, they will pay a minimum that is about this low price. But also they pay a premium to these farmers that can be used for example, infrastructure, developing schools, and the farmer have two representatives of this cooperative that will participate in the business decision of this company. So this means that we are integrating the community to the business structure.
That is amazing, and these examples are very inspiring. There is a lot more examples throughout the book. The book lays out many different ways in which the functioning of the company, of the organization, could be stuck, and ways to transcend them, with then examples of those who managed to do and additional resources to explore. So the the fairness towards suppliers, and the way that the divine chocolate sounds delicious, is treating their community, their social environment, brings me to the second big topic I hope to cover. In addition to creativity, what we need is trust. And so, can you also walk us through some of the factors that are holding people back from having more trust in their organizations?
Yes, yeah, there are many factors, but we will mention some of them. So, for example, groupthink. Groupthink is a very important factor that prevent people from trusting each other. Why? Because groupthink implies that there are some views within an organization that are common views. They are not allowing, these common views do not allow people to dissent, to offer any dissent. So this means that even these views might be wrong in many cases, people cannot offer any feedback to improve things. So this means that in this type of workplaces, we consider these workplaces as workplaces that are not psychologically safe. People cannot give their opinion. Why? Because they might be criticized, they might be penalized. And so there is a common view, and common view that could be leading the business to bankruptcy in many cases. There's an example mentioned in the book, but also I offer in the book also opposite examples to groupthink. Groupthink is when the view is shared by many people and you cannot offer alternative views. For example, in the case of Netflix and Pixar, in the case of Netflix, people can give one another with feedback on a regular basis. You can even give feedback to your managers, to your superiors, what is very good. Not many companies allow to employees to do this, but also in the case of Pixar, to develop a movie machine that is a very complex process and implies the interaction of different departments, the technical department, the artistic department, financial department. But for example, a very important interaction that is common in most of the movies for this company is the technical and the artistic department interact on a regular basis and they give feedback to each other. For example, should we change the color of this character? Should we make this character thinner or chubbier? Should we use a different background instead of using a forest? Should we use let's say a square? So this means that, and people are very willing to receive this feedback. They don't get offended. They don't take this on a personal level. Why? Because they think on a from the broader perspective. They think that they might have also blind spots that can be covered by other people. So they're open-minded.
Yes, you also have fear of open dialogue laid out in the book. And I love the way you mentioned that managers sometimes assume that they possess better knowledge than subordinates. From years and
Yes.
years in companies, I've seen people on the front lines have so much more detailed, vital information on viability of certain initiatives, on changes in the market, and companies who actually feed that live, real information back are so much better at adapting and creating real value, um, as you mentioned, for customers.
Yes, and also this happen also at the top level, also on managerial level. Many managers and executive, top executive, are acting in a very arrogant way. They believe that they know it all. They are not open to any outside views or alternative views. However, I mentioned in the book an example of Target, that is a merchandise retailer that has more than 400,000 employees, and this company continually conducts surveys with employees to assess the work conditions, but also to assess the relationship between the company and its customer, and they are willing to get this suggestion from employees on board, analyzed by different bodies within the organization. And also another example that is mentioned is 3M, that is a company that develop different products, adhesive and others, and also they have an open door policy. This means that you can connect on a regular basis directly with your managers to give your view, to give some suggestion for improvement. Why? Because you know your area very well. If you are continually in contact with the customer, you know what is not working well in this relationship, and you can suggest manager to, for example, to implement new policies or to offer new services, or you can comment about the customer complaints that if you don't have an open door policy, this wouldn't be possible.
Yes. So it feels like trust relates very profoundly to the human need for autonomy, and that environments with lack of trust really, really infringe on that. I, uh,
So
I
important.
I love the list of fears of delegating. By the way, the book has so many systematic overviews of various aspects, which literally enables you to read through, find what
Thank you.
resonates with you, um, or start difficult conversations and open dialogue in the company. So, from the point of view of enabling people to take the first steps, it's truly a very exhaustive, incredible resource. So, there's
Thank
a
you.
list. Yes, thank you. So, there's a list of fears of delegating, and I loved it because I've encountered all of it in so many shapes and forms. Um, Fear of employees not knowing how to act in certain situations. That's why they should be trained and they should be given the broader context of what it is they're trying to achieve. So they can surprise us with better ideas and solutions that could ever come from the top. And also, making everyone completely aware of the mission is foundational to your book. You start by explaining that the mission is the map of the world for the company, and that without it, and that it's very important for everyone to completely understand it, that it's important that it's very detailed, because that is how people can be empowered to act as a part of the whole in a cohesive direction. Then fear of employees not working effectively, or another reason why people are afraid to delegate, which is also something that can be improved in non-controlling ways. Fear of employees doing things differently. This is so this suppresses people being authentic and being able to play to their strengths, because a manager would need to be able to foster individuality and have intellectual and emotional bandwidth to adapt to the differences in people and welcome them. So it's much easier to try to curtail them. And the very, very understandable fear of employees not achieving company objectives, which is also on your list of fears that prevent people from delegating. That is a very valid fear, but again, if you design the KPIs in a meaningful way, um, then that would actually work. The problem is that most KPIs have nothing to do with the actual things that need to happen for a company to succeed. Then there's also the fear of employees wasting company resources, and uh, that's just um, a short among the lists in the book that all help people try to understand a different point of view, especially across the hierarchical lines or across the functional lines in a company.
But this
Uh,
is very interesting, the list of fears, because you know what? When a manager have this fear, they don't delegate, they try to control thoroughly each of the activities that are performed by employees. They are treating employees like naughty children, so they don't trust them. They are micromanaging them, and this cannot reach the highest levels of effectiveness, competitiveness, efficacy. Why? Because employees feel constrained. They don't allow employees to rely on their own expertise, their experience, their creative skills. And managers, when trying to control these employees, are attacking employees' autonomy. The important need for autonomy, because most of the employees have the need for autonomy and they need to feel competent. If you treat them like naughty children, how they can feel competent? How they can feel free to act in the way that they best know? So this is not good. This is generating what we call an untrustworthy workplace, and employees feel that they're not adding any value to the company's mission, as you mentioned at the beginning.
Yes, and a huge waste of human potential.
Hmm.
So, what would be examples that you can bring up of successful trust building within companies?
Well, there is a very interesting example of Morningstar, that is a company that produces what we call food products related to tomato, for example, diced tomato, tomate puree, and so on. And this company employees are self-managed, so they have a personal mission that they set themselves, and personal mission with objectives, and also they manage the resources to achieve this personal mission, but also they have an action plan where they set up their roles, they set up their own roles, and how they will interact with other roles within the organization. And this personal action plan is negotiated with other colleagues. So this means that this company doesn't have like a department of human resources. Why? Because employees can hire new people when needed. They can buy new machinery when needed. These employees are fully reliant, self-reliant, and this company is very effective and very, very successful. Why? Because they trust employees' innate capabilities, innermost skills, and also their creative skill and capabilities. So this is an interesting example mentioned in the book.
That sounds incredible and probably a little out of reach for a lot of companies. But another thing that's mentioned in the book is job crafting. And I really like that the way you described the job crafting concept, that employees are able to determine the nature, scope of tasks they undertake, because if you explain to them, or if you share their purpose there through this is what you're here to achieve, that is very fundamentally different than giving them a list of tasks, and even worse, percent of time they should spend on each one. Um, so this job crafting could be much more attainable for where a lot of companies are at right now. So can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yes, this work, you have different type of job crafting that are mentioned in the research, in the literature, but you have job crafting. The traditional job crafting is that the employee can, for example, choose the scope and the type of activity that they will perform and how they will perform. But then you have job crafting in relation to bonds within the workplace. And this means that the employees can choose who they will relate to and who they will not relate to. So this means that they don't have to relate to every person within the company, but they relate according to their needs, according to their views, according to their experience. But also you have what we call the perceptual aspect of job crafting. This means how you perceive your role. Yeah, an interesting example mentioned in one of the papers is that instead of being you like a customer service officer, maybe you are a customer emotional supporter. This means that you reframe how you see your role. And by reframing how you see your role, you reframe the relationship with this stakeholder. If you are a customer emotional supporter, you will try to do your best for them to feel well, to buy a product that made them feel satisfied, to avoiding selling products that made them feel dissatisfied, to care for them after they arrive home and they will contact you to the ups and downs. For example, you will support them on a regular basis. Instead, when you focus only on the strict description of the role, like a customer service officer, this might be a bit inappropriate. Why? Because it doesn't define the full scope of this support.
So that makes me think of the way you support companies in your work, the way you do diagnostic and observation. And what you mentioned to me is that a lot of times these kinds of personalized approaches are considered a waste of time. And the management or whoever is trying to optimize the company performance is really focused on volume of calls or volume of customers or volume of something being high in a given unit of time. But if people are able to holistically support customers or holistically support their colleagues, like you just mentioned, uh, how does that create a difference other than in their sense of autonomy and in the customer's sense of satisfaction?
So true, so true. Because in many cases, we see that companies treat employees like cogs in a machinery, a piece of machinery. Why? Because if the employee doesn't work well, need to be replaced like a part, like a faulty part of a machinery. However, shop crafting and any other tool that similar to this allow employee to take initiative. This means that we are talking about a human being with discernment, with creative skills, with experience, with expertise that can take charge of their own tasks and their role. But also in the case of customers, when we reframe this, for example, roles like a customer emotional supporter, you are talking to customer in a much more humane way. Why? Because you don't consider this customer as a figure in your database that is contributing to the company's sales. You are talking to a legitimate human being with legitimate needs that need to be addressed in the most important way possible, in the most meaningful way, and you are trying to care for them. You are others center instead of being self centered. You try to get the best product for them, adding the most important value for them so that they can come back maybe, and maybe they can recommend your product to other potential customers. So you are treating people, employees in the case of shop crafting, and also customer in a much more humane way.
So paradoxically, even though it seems like a waste of time, it can lead to superior, in my experience, superior standard classical results like revenues, profit, market share.
Yes, yes. So true, so true.
There is another company that would love to mention, the Kaya Cookies. If we talk about the role
Okay,
we want
Kaya Cookies.
business
Well,
to
this is a
play in the
company that
world.
is, yes, Kaya Cookie is a company that is based in South Africa, and this company is a company that produces bakery products. So, for example, cookies. This company is very unique. Why? Because this company try to integrate the community members to business. How they do this in practice? They employ, especially women that are unemployed. There is a small town in South Africa that has hundreds of thousands of people that are unemployed and they live in condition of poverty. In some cases, they live in a boat of one room with very basic condition and very basic needs unmet. And this company take many of these women on board. They train these women on, for example, bakery skills, but also they train them on customer service skills. And these women feel proud of their qualification, their training, and also they're feeling proud because they are can sustain their families. They can take care of their families. So this company is very focused on communities in need and integrate this community to the business model. So this is an interesting example.
Yes, it sounds like the local way of life is completely transformed thanks to this company and so much human potential put to creative use. I would like to mention something I forgot to say, which is that we will leave some time for audience questions. So please feel free to submit them in Q&A, and we will ask Professor Cignacco to dive into that. Um, so the talking about the creativity and trust, which are only small parts of a very holistic overview in the book. Um, the I just want to say that the book is so systematic and exhaustive and detailed roadmap that anyone can explore and discover many things that resonate and pull on threads that are very rich with a reference set listed in the bibliography. And I wonder, when you look at all the companies you work with, what gives you hope in the
Okay.
context of uh, the creativity and trust?
Very interesting question. Yes, what give me hope that I can see some shifts. I can see some shifts. For example, when we train companies, in some cases the company is only economically oriented. This means that they focus only on the bottom line. This means that they focus only on these key performance indicators such as profit, market share, and so on. But however, when they go through the training, there many companies are open-minded people working for this company, and they understand that business is not only about economic factor, but there are also social factor that need to be taken into consideration. And social factor means improving the lives of employees, customers, community members, suppliers, because they are all human beings with needs that need to be legitimately acknowledged. But also, we see companies also that take on board what we call environmental issues. So, and they have a much more complete view of business. This means that they focus on profit and other economic aspects. They focus on people. This means improving the lives of all stakeholders, internal and external, and they focus on environmental aspects like recycling, using renewable sources of energy. This company know that by doing so, they're not only benefiting the whole ecosystem, but also they have a better reputation. What bring about trust? Because when the company have social activities and environmentally friendly activities, they have a better brand image. They're recognized by the society as companies that are not only greedy about profit. They are giving back to the community. They are supporting the community. And in some cases, we saw some example today, they're integrating the community to their business model. But also in relation to creativity, I have some hope too, because I see that companies understand that in the fast changing environment we call volatile business environment, you cannot be stuck to the past. Even we, all human beings, we are naturally resistant to change. However, we have to understand that change will happen even without our participation. It's better to be proactive on board. This means that we have to take initiative, not to be brush up by change. Instead, shaping the future, and shaping the future with more change. Change will bring about more change, and we cannot stop change. And change, we saw that affect all sectors, affect the transport sector, supermarket sector, the movie sector, and this will be affecting all areas. And we don't have to be fearful of change, and we don't have to be fearful of creativity, because creativity, the most important objective, is not only producing or generating something novel, but also bring about a better society, bringing about a better livelihood for everyone in the world.
Yes, that very holistic view actually reminds me of the fact that you lay out how to restructure the relationships within the organization, but then there are entire chapters on how companies can transform their relationships with the rest of the ecosystem. There is fair agreements with suppliers with a win-win mindset, which provides a lot more resilience in times of crisis because there is trust at the inter-organizational level. There is sharing resources with companies who are offering similar services. A little bit mind-blowing for some. But resources shared can be technology, contacts, technical information, customers, human resources, facilities, distribution channels. They can band together to spread business risks more evenly if it requires quite a shift in perspective. But once you're there, the opportunities that open up are quite wide and powerful.
I want to.
And yeah,
Can I mention one example that you are talking
please.
about sharing resources? Virgin Atlantic is an airline, well-known airline, has developed a partnership with other airlines, potential competitors in the sector. And how can this be? An airline partnering up with other airlines? Why? Because they want to create a network, a cooperative network, where companies support one another. And so this means that Virgin Atlantic can offer their passenger a wider range of destination as compared with the situation without this network. So this means that partnering up with other airlines, they allow this company to serve customer better, to add more value to customer. So this means that you can also develop partnership with potential competitors, or what we call competing companies.
That is a great example because airlines is a cutthroat business and they found a way to make it collaborative. Um, there's also community-oriented businesses. So the supplier relationship transformation, the competitor, or um, well, not to be thought only as a competitor, a relationship transformation, and also the community-oriented activities like Ella's Kitchen. I just think that we can never get enough inspiration from people who are doing things in new ways, improving the lives. So we do have
Eh,
an audience question, but I will let you finish
Okay.
finish Ella's Kitchen first, please.
Ella's Kitchen, well, it's a very interesting company that develop food for children, and this company has partnered up with different organizations. TerraCycle, for example, is an organization that recycle any type of material, and as a consequence of this partnership, this company, Ella's Kitchen, can recycle the pouches for food instead of wasting this material. Can be recycled and can be reused, but also can develop partnership with other organizations, environmental organizations, for example, to protect the Ecuador rainforest. So this means that they have an impact on society, an impact on the environment. It's a company that is integrated and have a mission that is not only economically focused, but also socially focused and environmentally oriented.
I didn't catch the social component. Sorry.
The social component, well, I didn't mention it, but the social component, they partner up with another organization that provide education for nurseries and schools, how to eat better. So they partner up. So this means that this non-profit organization teach children going to nursery and school how to eat healthy. And Ella Kitchen is partnered up with this organization. Obviously, they're providing the food for these children. So this is the social aspect that I forgot to mention. Sorry.
Wow, also very critical. So we have a question. Um, Dr. Cignacco, what are some of your favorite companies with a humanitarian ethic whose products you use yourself, and why do you like them?
Well, I like Patagonia. Patagonia. I have some product Patagonia. Patagonia is a company that produces attire products. And why is so important? Because they use a metaphor that is quite insightful, quite meaningful. They say our shareholder is the planet. Our shareholder owner is the planet. It's not true, but it's so true that this company has been donated part of their profit to environmental causes and protecting the environment in different ways. For example, using organic cotton, tracking the production of this cloth product to see that they're doing this in a sustainable way. So this company, I feel that is an example and a model to emulate by other close company. Close sector, you have many companies that are acting in the opposite way. They are obviously polluting the environment, emitting lot of carbon dioxide emission, in some cases exploiting employees, so not good. But it is a very good example, and these are clothes that I use on a regular basis.
um, there is also a John Paul Mitchell example that I was hoping we could get to.
John Paul Mitchell, well, John Paul Mitchell is a company that produces hair products. It's very important. And this company has partnership with Baby to Baby. Baby to Baby is a social organization that provides cribs, meal to babies from mothers in need. So this means that they're donating a lot of resources and in some cases funds to support the social organization. But this Jean Paul Mitchell system, they are also supporting environmentally friendly organizations such as Rainforest. And Rainforest is a social organization that try to plant trees in different parts of the world, especially when there is a lot of deforestation, when the trees have been cut down, and so they try to reforest the different parts of the world. This is a very interesting example of a company that has social approach. This means helping children of mothers in need, and also environmental approach. This means supporting environmental causes.
I like how you cover the entire range from the very traditional business where they can use the resources they create, such as funds, simply to invest in solutions to environmental and social issues, and then all the way towards actually transforming business models and innovation approach to embed in major unsolved problems and make that the source of the value and success for the company, and multiply the positive impact on the planet and society. So I guess when you start working with a company, first you assess where they're at, and then based on observation, diagnostic, you conclude what is the most meaningful way for the particular company to proceed based on where it is with its people and the
So
rest. Yeah.
So true. But also I analyze a very important aspect that is present in almost most of organizations. So that is there any fear within this workplace? Is there any fear within the organization? Because we saw that if there is fear, there might be no delegation. The people might not trust each other. Might be fear of competing with, of being outpaced by colleagues, or delegating tasks, or making mistakes, or being fired. All this fear prevent people from being creative and prevent people from being trusting to others. Why? Because when you are fearful, you cannot trust others. You feel very, very vulnerable, and you cannot cooperate with others. Why? Because you adopt a defensive attitude. Instead, when you are not fearful and you have an environment that includes some values like kindness, generosity, gratitude, support, care, well, these values foster a much more psychologically workplace, and people are more likely to be innovative and trust each other. And we saw that trust obviously reduce the company's cost. Why? Because people are not fearful or too cautious, and they can share information, they can share resources, they can work cooperatively. And this is very important for relevant business projects.
I forgot to check whether the audience member was satisfied with the response to their question about your favorite companies. um, but in the meantime, is there anything else you'd like to bring up? Ah, they said that it's good.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you, thank you, thank you. I think that we can ask on a regular basis when we're advising companies, but also when we're working for any organization, profit organization or non-profit organization, we can ask ourselves, how can I generate much more trust-based bonds with our colleagues, with other stakeholders like customer, with the community member? How can I generate? These are what we call self-reflection questions that open up your perspective on how you do business. But also another question will be, how can I add more value to this product, to this service? How can I add more value to this business model? How can I improve? Because everything can be made better. There is nothing like perfection in business and in life. So you can always improve things. Try to avoid this effect of endowment effect, or the effect that we mentioned, extra long effect, that you found the solution and you are complacent. Complacency is never good for business, and society wouldn't have evolved. It will evolve in some areas. It wasn't because of innovative people, people that took the initiative to go ahead to change the world in to a small extent or big extent. So think about, how can I improve this conversation with my colleagues. In some cases, you can be creative when you communicate with your colleagues. You don't have to bring about a big discovery. How can I make this team work much more harmoniously and much more cooperatively? You can always introduce creativity and trust in each of the tasks in the workplace.
Yes, those small things can make a big difference, and the book is full of self-reflections also. So there are many different ways to engage with the topic, however people function, however they think or process the world. They can find an angle that resonates because you exposed every aspect of the organization fabric and ways to transform it from so many angles. But what would you say to a counter question of innovation for innovation's sake? So, yes, the endowment effect and being married to the status quo can be very detrimental to companies, but some struggle with too many things to chase after innovation wise.
Yes, but innovation for innovation's sake, innovation need to be with the very important characteristic that is to add value. You don't want to innovate for the innovation's sake, because innovation should be undertaken with the end user in mind. So we saw the Hippo roller that when they were developing this device, they had these women and girls that were struggling to get the water long distances, and they were designing with the user in mind, how they can make this product easier and easier to maintain for these women and girls, how they make their life easier, how they can allocate their time to much more important activity like work, or, for example, going to school in the case of girls. So this means that innovation for innovation's sake, I would say that could be a creative task, but the most important thing, if we take into account the whole ecosystem and the interdependence between the company and its stakeholders, should be to add more value to the world, to change the world in a positive way, to small extent or to big extent. So this means that you are not trying to be fancy with the innovation, but you try to make concrete impact, concrete effects, positive effect on people, and make their life easier. As like some entrepreneur will say, you try to make a little dent, positive dent on the wall, or shape the wall in a much more positive way.
That makes sense. Couldn't agree more. And thank you for building an incredibly rich, detailed referenced roadmap for anyone who would like to try. This is the end of the hour. Very, very thankful to you and everyone who listened
Thank you.
live or later.
Thank you, Milja. Thank you very much for your question and your comment that are very insightful. And thank you for the audience to come here. Thank you.
Pleasure.